All right, let's jump right in. We're diving deep today into ways to manage fear and anxiety using the guide you gave us, Fight Your Fears.
Great source. Lots of good stuff in there.
Definitely. And, what really stood out to me from the start is that it's not about trying to eliminate fear entirely.
Right, because I think a lot of people kind of have that impression that, like, the goal is to just never be afraid of anything.
Yeah, like to become some sort of like fearless robot or something.
Exactly. But that's not realistic, and it's not even really healthy.
So, how does this guide approach fear then? What's the overall philosophy?
Well, it starts by acknowledging that fear is a natural human emotion, and it actually serves a purpose.
Okay, so it's not like a bad thing to feel fear.
Not at all.
Mm.
In fact, it can be really helpful in certain situations.
Like how? Give me an example.
Well, think about it. If you're walking down a dark street at night and you hear footsteps behind you, it's natural to feel a sense of fear, right?
Yeah, definitely.
That fear is what keeps you alert and aware of your surroundings. It might even prompt you to speed up or cross the street, take some action to protect yourself.
I see. So it's like a built-in alarm system that can help us stay safe.
Exactly.
Hmm.
It's our body's way of signaling that there might be danger present and we need to be prepared to respond.
Okay, so fear has its place. But what about when it starts to feel like it's controlling us?
That's when it becomes a problem.
And that's where this guide, Fight Your Fears, comes in.
Exactly. It provides us with a bunch of practical tools and techniques to help us manage those feelings of fear and prevent them from taking over.
So it's less about getting rid of fear altogether and more about like getting in the driver's seat so it doesn't drive us.
Love that analogy.
Mhm.
It's about understanding how fear works, recognizing when it's helpful and when it's not, and then learning how to respond to it in a way that serves us.
I'm starting to get a clearer picture here. So the guide acknowledges that everyone experiences fear, it's normal, and it can even be helpful at times. But then it goes on to provide strategies for those times when fear becomes overwhelming or starts to negatively impact our lives.
Exactly. It's like, okay, we all feel fear, but here's how to deal with it so it doesn't run the show.
I like that. So let's dig into some of those strategies. What are some of the first things the guide suggests for managing fear?
Well, one of the key points it makes is that fear is both a physical and a mental experience.
Okay, I can see that. Like when I get anxious, my heart starts racing. I might even feel a little shaky. But then there are also all those thoughts swirling around in my head.
Exactly. So the guide recommends addressing both the physical and mental aspects of fear.
Makes sense. So where do we start?
Well, let's start with the physical because it's often the easiest to address in the moment, when you're feeling that surge of anxiety.
Okay, so like, what are some things we can do to calm our bodies down when we're feeling anxious?
The guide recommends a few simple but really effective techniques, and these might sound familiar because they're pretty common, but they really do work.
Hit me with them.
So first off, exercise.
Wait, seriously? You're telling me going for a run can help me overcome my fear of public speaking?
Maybe not overcome entirely, but it can definitely help manage those physical symptoms of anxiety.
How so?
When we exercise, our body releases endorphins, which have mood-boosting effects.
So it's like a natural high.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it also helps to burn off that excess adrenaline that's coursing through our system when we're feeling anxious.
Interesting. So it's not just about getting physically fit, it's also about regulating our nervous system.
Absolutely. Exercise is like a reset button for our bodies and minds.
I can definitely see how that would be helpful. Are there any other techniques the guide suggests?
Deep breathing exercises are another powerful tool. This is something you can do literally anywhere, anytime.
Yeah, I've heard about this, but honestly, I've never really tried it.
It's super simple, but so effective. When we're anxious, our breath tends to become shallow and rapid.
Yeah, I can relate to that. It's like
Mm.
you're gasping for air.
Exactly. And that just perpetuates the cycle of anxiety. But when we consciously slow down our breath and breathe deeply from our diaphragm, we're sending a signal to our brain that things are okay.
So it's like tricking our body into relaxing.
In a way, yes. By controlling our breath, we can actually influence our heart rate and blood pressure, which helps to calm down that fight or flight response.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've got exercise and deep breathing. What else?
Another technique the guide highlights is muscle relaxation.
Oh, interesting. Tell me more about that.
When we're stressed or anxious, we often tense up our muscles without even realizing it.
Oh, yeah, I totally do that. I clench my jaw or tighten my shoulders.
Right, so progressive muscle relaxation involves consciously tensing and then releasing different muscle groups throughout your body, starting with your toes and working your way up to your head.
So it's like a full body scan, paying attention to where we're holding tension.
Exactly. And as you tense and release each muscle group, you become more aware of your body and you start to let go of that physical tension, which helps to reduce overall feelings of anxiety.
Okay, this is making a lot of sense. So we've got these tools to calm the body down. Exercise, breathing, and muscle relaxation.
Right.
But what about the mental side of fear? The thoughts and worries that can keep us up at night.
That's where things get really interesting. And that's what we'll dive into next.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's tackle those mental monsters.
Let's do it. So, ready to dive into the mental side of fear?
Yeah, let's tackle those thought gremlins.
All right. So the first thing Fight Your Fears emphasizes is the importance of identifying our fears.
Okay, that makes sense. But sometimes it's like, I know I'm feeling anxious, but I can't quite put my finger on what's causing it.
Right. It can be kind of vague and amorphous, like a big cloud of worry.
Exactly. So how do we get more specific?
Well, the guide suggests asking ourselves a few key questions.
Like what?
It starts with, what am I afraid of? Seems simple, but it's important to really articulate it.
Okay, so like instead of just saying, I'm afraid of public speaking, I might say, I'm afraid of forgetting my lines and looking like a fool in front of everyone.
Exactly. Getting that specific helps us understand the root of the fear.
And then what?
Then the guide asks, why am I afraid of it? So digging deeper into the reasons behind that fear.
Okay, so in the public speaking example, I might realize that my fear stems from a belief that my worth is tied to my performance. Like if I mess up, it means I'm a failure.
Right. And that's a really common fear, by the way. A lot of our anxieties come from these underlying beliefs about ourselves and the world.
That's making a lot of sense. So we ask ourselves what and then why? Is there another question?
Yeah, the third one is, what do I try not to think about?
Ooh, that's interesting. Why that one?
Because sometimes our fears are so uncomfortable that we try to push them away, bury them deep down.
Oh, I definitely do that. If something makes me anxious, I'll just try to distract myself and pretend it's not there.
But the thing is, those fears don't just disappear. They often fester and grow stronger in the shadows.
So this question is about bringing those hidden fears to the surface, shining a light on them.
Exactly. And it can be a little scary to confront those things we've been avoiding, but it's a crucial step in overcoming them.
It's like once we acknowledge those fears, we can start to dismantle them.
Yeah, and that's where the guide strategies really come into play.
Right. So we've identified our fears. What's next?
Well, the next step, Fight Your Fears, suggests is challenging our thinking.
Okay, how do we do that?
One of the key techniques it highlights is something called worst-case thinking.
Wait, what? You mean like intentionally thinking about the worst possible scenario?
Yep. It sounds counterintuitive, but hear me out.
Okay, I'm listening.
A lot of times, our fears are fueled by these catastrophic thoughts like, what if I completely bomb this presentation and everyone laughs at me?
Oh, yeah. My brain loves to go there.
Right. But those thoughts are often irrational and exaggerated.
So this technique is about bringing those fears out into the open and examining them logically.
Exactly. So you think about that worst-case scenario, and then you ask yourself, what are the actual odds of that happening?
And usually, the odds are pretty slim.
Right. And then you ask yourself, even if the worst did happen, how bad would it really be?
Like, could I handle it?
Exactly. And in most cases, you realize that you're much stronger and more resilient than you give yourself credit for.
So it's about putting those fears into perspective and realizing they're not as scary as they seem in our heads.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And that can be a really liberating experience.
I can see that. So worst case thinking is one way to challenge our thinking. What else does the guide suggest?
Another important technique is focusing on what we can't control.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
We often waste so much time and energy worrying about things that are completely outside our control, like the weather, other people's opinions, or even the past.
Oh my gosh, I am the queen of worrying about things I can't change.
Right. But Fight Your Fears emphasizes that the only things we truly have control over are our thoughts, our responses, and our actions.
So it's about shifting our focus from the things we can't control to the things we can.
Exactly. And that could be a really empowering shift.
Because it gives us a sense of agency, like we're not just helpless victims of our circumstances.
Exactly. And the guide provides some specific examples of how to put this into practice, like focusing on our breathing when we're feeling anxious, choosing how we respond to difficult situations, or even just being mindful of the information we consume.
That's so helpful. So it's about taking back our power and focusing on what we can actually influence.
Exactly. It's like reclaiming our energy and redirecting it towards something positive.
I love that. Okay, so we've talked about identifying our fears, challenging our thinking, and focusing on what we can control.
Right.
Those are some powerful tools. What else does Fight Your Fears have up its sleeve?
Well, it also emphasizes the importance of mindfulness and meditation for managing fear.
Ooh, I've been wanting to get into meditation. How does that help with fear?
Well, one of the things fear does is it pulls us out of the present moment.
Like we get caught up in worries about the future or regrets about the past.
Exactly. And that just perpetuates the cycle of anxiety.
So mindfulness and meditation are about bringing our attention back to the present moment.
Exactly. It's about noticing our thoughts and feelings without judgment and just being present with what is.
So it's like hitting the pause button on that mental chatter and just being here
I
now.
love that. It's about cultivating a sense of inner peace and stillness, even amidst the chaos of life.
That sounds amazing, but I'll be honest, I've tried meditation before and I always find my mind wandering.
That's totally normal. It takes practice. But the guide offers some great tips for beginners, like starting with just a few minutes each day and focusing on your breath.
Okay, that seems manageable.
And it also recommends some specific apps that offer guided meditations, which can be really helpful for beginners.
Like what?
Some popular ones are Headspace, Calm, Aura, and Glow. They offer a variety of meditations for different purposes, including managing stress and anxiety.
I'll definitely check those out. Okay, so mindfulness and meditation are about being present, calming the mind, and finding that inner peace.
Exactly. And, one of the things I love about Fight Your Fears is that it emphasizes the importance of seeking support when we need it.
Oh, yeah. That's so crucial. We don't have to go through this alone.
Right. It can be really helpful to talk to a trusted friend, family member, therapist, or even join a support group.
And the guide even offers some guidance on how to know when it's time to seek professional help.
Like if your fears are interfering with your daily life, causing you significant distress, or if you're having thoughts of harming yourself or others.
Right. Those are definitely signs that it's time to reach out for professional support.
It's about recognizing our limits and knowing when we need to ask for help.
And there's absolutely no shame in that.
Exactly. In fact, it's a sign of strength and self-awareness.
This is all so helpful. I'm feeling much more equipped to deal with fear now.
That's great to hear. And there's one more technique from Fight Your Fears that I think is worth mentioning.
Oh, what's that?
It's called scheduling your worries.
Scheduling my worries. That sounds kind of strange. How does that work?
Well, the idea is that instead of trying to suppress your worries, which often makes them come back stronger, you set aside a specific time each day to worry.
So, like, I have a meeting with my anxieties at 4 p.m. every day.
Exactly. You give yourself permission to worry during that designated time, and the rest of the day you focus on other things.
I've never thought of it that way. But I can see how that could be helpful in breaking the cycle of constant worrying.
It's about creating boundaries around your worries, rather than letting them take over your entire day.
And it gives you a sense of control, like you're choosing when and where to engage with those anxieties.
Exactly. And the guide suggests setting aside just 15 to 30 minutes each day for this worry time.
Okay, that seems manageable.
And if a worry pops up outside of that designated time, you just gently remind yourself that you'll address it later.
So it's about training your mind to focus on worries at a specific time rather than letting them intrude on your entire day.
Exactly. And it might take some practice, but the guide emphasizes that it can be incredibly effective in reducing overall worry and improving mental clarity.
I'm definitely going to give that a try. It sounds like a really practical tool for managing those pesky anxieties.
I think so too.
Yeah.
And, as we've been diving deep into these strategies, I'm struck by how much of it comes down to self-compassion.
Oh, yeah, we keep coming back to that. Why is that so important?
Well, when we're struggling with fear, it's so easy to be hard on ourselves, to judge ourselves for feeling afraid or for not handling it perfectly.
It's like we add a layer of shame on top of the fear.
Exactly. And that just makes things worse.
So self-compassion is about treating ourselves with kindness and understanding, even when we're struggling.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all human, we all make mistakes, and we all have our own unique challenges.
And it's about offering ourselves the same support and encouragement that we would offer a close friend who is going through a tough time.
I love that. It's about being our own best friend.
And I think that's a really beautiful way to approach fear, with gentleness and understanding.
I agree. It's about remembering that we're not alone in this and that we have the strength and resilience to overcome whatever challenges we face.
It's amazing how much this deep dive has already shifted my perspective on fear.
Me too. It's like
Yep.
we've been unpacking this heavy suitcase full of all these misconceptions and anxieties.
Yeah, and starting to replace them with more empowering beliefs and tools.
Exactly. And one of the things that keeps coming up for me is this idea that fear can actually be a catalyst for growth.
Ooh, I like that. Can you elaborate on that a little?
Well, we often think of fear as something to be avoided, something that holds us back. But what if we started to see it as a signal that we're on the verge of something new, something exciting?
Like, it's not necessarily a sign that we're going in the wrong direction, but maybe that we're about to step outside of our comfort zone.
Exactly. It's like that feeling you get right before you go on a roller coaster, a mix of nervousness and anticipation.
Yeah, that edge of excitement.
Right. And sometimes the things that scare us the most are the very things that have the potential to transform us.
So it's about learning to lean into that discomfort, to trust that on the other side of fear is something amazing.
I love that. And, Fight Your Fears
Mm.
talks about how fear often shows up in disguise.
Ooh, that's interesting. Tell me more about that.
Well, it might not always look like that classic fight or flight response, the racing heart and sweaty palms.
So how else does it manifest?
It can show up as procrastination, perfectionism, people-pleasing, even self-sabotage.
Wow, I can definitely relate to some of those.
Right. We might put off starting a project because we're afraid of failing, or we might obsess over every little detail because we're terrified of making a mistake.
And sometimes we might even unconsciously create obstacles for ourselves because deep down we're not sure we deserve success.
Exactly. So it's important to be aware of those patterns and to ask ourselves, what am I really afraid of here?
It's like peeling back the layers to get to the root of the issue.
Exactly. And once we identify the fear, we can start to address it with those tools and techniques we've been discussing.
Makes sense. So we've talked about seeing fear as a catalyst for growth and recognizing its disguises. What other insights does Fight Your Fears offer about navigating this complex emotion?
Well, one thing that really resonated with me is the idea that courage isn't the absence of fear, but rather the willingness to act in spite of it.
Oh, I love that. It's like we don't have to wait until we feel completely fearless to start pursuing our dreams.
Right, because if we waited for that, we might be waiting forever.
Exactly. Courage is about showing up and doing the thing even when we're scared.
And, the more we practice courage, the easier it becomes.
It's like building a muscle. The more we use it, the stronger it gets.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to celebrate our wins along the way, no matter how small they might seem.
Yeah, even just taking that first step, no matter how tiny, is a victory worth celebrating.
Absolutely. And I think it's also important to remember that we're not alone in this.
You know, we keep coming back to that theme of community and support, and it's so powerful.
Right, like everyone experiences fear. It's a universal human emotion.
So we're all in this together.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to talk about it, to share our experiences, to normalize it.
Because when we do that, we take away some of its power.
It's like we're shining a light on those shadows and reminding ourselves that we're not alone in the darkness.
And you know, as we've been exploring all these strategies and insights from Fight Your Fears, one thing has become crystal clear to me,
What's that?
that we have so much more power over our fear than we realize.
That is so true. It's not something that has to control us, dictate our choices, or limit our lives.
We have the tools, the resources, and the inner strength to face our fears and create a life that is aligned with our truest selves.
And the more we practice these tools, the more confident and courageous we become.
Exactly. It's like we're reclaiming our power step by step, breath by breath, choice by choice.
And the world needs our courage. Your unique gifts, talents, and voice are all needed. Don't let fear silence you.
So let's go out there and face our fears knowing that we have everything we need to succeed. Thanks for joining us on this incredible deep dive.